Hey, I'm Lee, and welcome to this channel's first ever video. If the timestamp on this one is new, I don't suggest going to check for other videos because they don't exist. But if you'd like to encourage this channel to contain more videos, I would suggest going and pressing the subscribe button. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about the websites that I spent all my time on as a child, and particularly my fascination goes towards the ones that are now entirely defunct. Many of the ones I loved are half dead now due to the obsolescence of Flash, and now are only accessible with difficult workarounds that may potentially infect your computer. But more than anything, my fascination goes towards the ones that are now 100% inaccessible. No backup, no hosting, no nothing. BarbieGirls.com now only exists as screen recordings from now grown kids' YouTube channels from a decade ago. And so this supplementary footage is going to have a lot of unregistered hypercam. So what was BarbieGirls.com? This high-femme virtual world was a staple for young girls who dreamed of something a little more glamorous than reality, and all you had to do to attain that was pay a recurring fee. Not that you really had to, but didn't you? Hosted on Mattel's doll-based game website everythinggirl.com, Barbie Girls was nestled in the menu between the likes of My Scene, Polly Pocket, and Barbie herself. As I alluded to, BarbieGirls.com was known for one thing in particular, the VIP subscription system. This monetization scheme was very new at the time and very risky. Microtransactions had shown some promise on websites that catered to a more diverse range of ages, like Gaia Online and Neopets, but BarbieGirls.com was unequivocally for children. The only other kids game I can think of at the time with the optional subscription model was Club Penguin, which I think it's safe to say that Mattel was inspired by. You could argue that Webkinz employed this model before the others did, but I would disagree because Webkinz was built around a physical product, whereas the Club Penguin or Barbie Girls VIP subscription only pays for access to the digital world. Well, except for the MP3 players, but I'll get to those. Regarding the title of this video, BarbieGirls.com was not a scam so much in the traditional sense because you did receive the advertised product for the agreed amount that you paid for. Technically, this business model isn't so much a scam as it is shady. The way this system was implemented pressured girls to beg their parents for money, not only so they could have full access to a game that they loved, but also to fit in. Not illegal, but I would still argue that preying on the emotions of kids like that is a low-grade scam. One major issue with tracking the history of Barbie Girls is that the archivists were largely kids below the age of 13. Therefore, the accuracy and journalistic integrity of my sources leaves much to be desired. I'll do my best to only include information that I've determined to be decently veritable, although that doesn't change that my source material basically amounts to interviewing a bunch of second graders. There wasn't much media hoopla around the release of BarbieGirls.com, with most coverage being very perfunctory and surface level. However, there were a handful of more in-depth articles. A straightforward one from DMN covers the product's launch and the release of the 60? Those MP3 players were $60 in 2000s money? Barbie Girls is the result of listening to what girls want, researching how they play, and fusing it with the right technology to deliver a completely new experience. Chuck Scothen, General Manager and Senior Vice President at Mattel Brands. The article goes on to detail the site's notorious chat filtering system. 2 types of chat will be available on the site. B-chat is more widely available and more restricted kind of chat that is conducted in the girls' room and in public zones. Secret B-chat is a private chat that happens only in a girl's room and is only accessible to girls who have the Barbie Girls MP3 device and who have physically connected their devices into another user's computer docking station. I would like to point out that this description is technically inaccurate, although probably accurate at the time of the article's release. There were 3 levels of chat filtering on BarbieGirls.com: B-chat, Super B-chat, and Secret B-chat. B-chat was the standard and used a pick-and-choose chat system that was fairly typical among chat systems that catered to young children. Kids that felt this was too restrictive could ask their parents, or used an email that they pretended was their parents, to upgrade to Super B-chat. Super B-chat used a word bank-based censor, meaning that only the words that already existed in a pre-approved list could be displayed. As you could imagine, this made discussion pretty difficult, especially since kids aren't always the greatest at spelling. Super B-chat must have been introduced later on because none of the product launch coverage mentions it. I never used Secret B-chat because I never knew anyone else who had an MP3 player, but I assume it was a slightly less restrictive chat, maybe using a forbidden word type censor. Here is a user-written description of the chat filter according to a Weebly site called WebRockers. Words that you can't say are blocked like this. Warning, do not think they are there to block swears. Ampersand pound like that. Words like come or came don't work, and you can't use words with apostrophes in it like can't and don't. But all you have to do is get rid of the apostrophe and make it don't and can't. As you might imagine, the restrictiveness of the chat was an unpopular feature. Toy News International goes into some more depth on the topic of the features of the game itself, boasting that girls can create their own highly personalized virtual characters by choosing from 2.64 quadrillion character combinations of fashions and accessories, as well as stylish faces, expressions, and hairstyles. Personalization also extends to each girl's room, with more than 4.6 quintillion combinations of room colors, floors, backgrounds, and furniture. The article also confirms my suspicions about secret B-chat. Some other media coverage includes this little Engadget article about the baby nerd potential of this kid's MMO, which adorably makes reference to Oblivion horse armor, which shows how novel the concept of a gaming microtransaction was at the time. The Mercury Daily News brings us this article on the product launch with this quote. "It's a much richer experience than highly popular toys like Gantz Webkinz," said Chris Byrne, a New York-based toy consultant. Chris, you sure about that? Because I can log into one right now and the other is a distant memory. The article also details where exactly the Barbie Girls release exists in the catty, horrible timeline of children's toy marketing. The launch comes as Mattel has been making inroads in turning around sales of the iconic brand, hurt by fierce competition from NGA Entertainment's Pouty Bratz dolls. Like most decisions Mattel was making in this post-2005 time period, Barbie Girls was released to divert attention away from the blisteringly popular Bratz line of products. I think it's pretty clear that the design of Barbie Girls is a reaction to market data saying that Barbie dolls are too old-fashioned for young girls of the era. And so, the slick, big-headed, anime-esque Barbie Girls design was chosen to propel the product into the future. Moving on, TechCrunch speculates on whether Barbie Girls could become the largest ever virtual world, neatly fulfilling Betteridge's law of headlines. The author compares the speed of the growth of Barbie Girls to the virtual world's Second Life, which I believe is a misguided comparison. Second Life came into being when virtual worlds were practically unheard of, but Barbie Girls came into existence when kids were very familiar with the concept of virtual worlds and were more than eager to participate in the newest hot one. There's an obvious reason why one caught on faster than the other, and like other virtual worlds that I've mentioned in this video, Second Life easily beats out Barbie Girls both in terms of longevity and cultural impact. The game at launch featured the following options in the map: Fernie Fever, Bee Cafe, Bee Cinemas, Posh Pets, Bee Park, and the fashion boutiques Style & Shop, Bee Chic Boutique, Charmed Accessories, and also Your Room. All of these were either shops or simple hangouts, with the exception of Bee Cinemas, which played Mattel promotional material. Style & Shop and Bee Chic Boutique were clothing stores with identical stock. Bee Chic would experience a redesign later on, removing this redundancy. The stock of these stores focused mostly on stylish but casual offerings, with the more fancy and elaborate items not being accessible to free-to-play users. Charmed Accessories operated similarly but with a stock of accessories like jewelry, glasses and sunglasses, purses, and hair accessories. Each hair accessory was locked to a specific hairstyle. Fernie Fever was for the site's entire lifespan the only source of furniture and room decor. The catalog of furniture was very expansive, especially for VIP users, and several items played unique animations when interacted with. These furniture items had several color and pattern customization options for a high degree of personalization. This store also housed a popular air hockey minigame. Bee Cafe was a hangout and chat spot that did not offer any items for sale. A more popular hangout option was Bee Park, which had a more natural and fantasy-inspired appearance. Club Beauty was the only VIP exclusive location at launch and contained several styling options that weren't available to non-VIP players. Free-to-play users could visit Posh Pets, but the pets themselves were VIP exclusive. Pets drove a lot of VIP sales, since not only could you purchase a cute companion for your avatar, the pets came with their own special interactable object for your rooms where you can have them play, eat, and sleep. And that's it. 3 commands. And kids really fell for it. Players could adopt one pet at a time and choose between options like a dog, cat, bunny, monkey, pink panda, penguin, turtle, and a variety of others. Glam Gowns was the first additional VIP exclusive area and focused on couture fashion, with a large runway down the center for impromptu fashion shows. The game went out of its beta phase in late summer 2008, rolling out a host of new updates to attract more users to the platform. The post-beta release expanded the map to include various themed districts. The majority of buildings mentioned previously became the Shopaholics area, while the Bee Park and Posh Pets split off to become the Pawpalooza. A residential area was added called Total Girlhood, as well as a fantasy theme park called Extreme Dream Park, and later Twilight Woods on the edge of the map. Several of these new additions, or at least parts of them, were VIP exclusive. I would be lying if I said I had many memories outside of Total Girlhood and Shopaholics, because I played Barbie Girls much less in its later years. There's one resource in particular that has been invaluable in filling in my post-beta memory, which is the Barbie Girls blog Wix site. I'll link to that in the description. I can't stress enough that this video would not have been possible without the impressively comprehensive documentation provided by this blog. It's the only blog that I've found that's still actively maintained by its curator, and the owner of the site has been extremely helpful with the making of this video. I insist, if you're nostalgic for BarbieGirls.com, go take a look at it. Barbie Girls renewed its focus on VIP subscriptions during this post-beta release, with several new features being for paid subscribers only. VIP promo bundles were released with items like pets and purses and other exclusive clothing items. Let me try to cover the features available in the final year of the site. In Total Girlhood, you could find Bee Central, a hub spot where users could hang out, view new updates, and travel to other parts of the map. This connected to an arcade where you could access most of the minigames. Your room was located in this area and was a studio apartment that you could decorate at your whim. Of course, your room looked way cooler if you had VIP. The Rock and Rec Center was an early 2010 edition, which had an interesting premise. A community event was launched to build the Rec Center, mostly by participating in a painting minigame. After enough player participation, the Rec Center's final design was revealed, looking planted, painted, and polished. A blimp labeled B&G floated above the residential area, which stood for Buzz and Goss. This was a social hub focused on community contests and polls, both for fun and community feedback. The blimp would change in appearance based on a regularly occurring player vote. In Pawpalooza, there was the VIP-only Tail Shaken Treehouse, a pet-themed hangout with a bunch of animals hanging around. Also VIP exclusive was the Jungle River Boogie, a game where you save baby animals. The Groom and Glam Pet Salon was added during a crossover event for the DS and Wii game Barbie Groom and Glam Pups. This area was a salon in name and appearance only. It served only as a hangout and did not come with any cosmetic customization updates for pets. I already mentioned most of the Shopaholics locations, but there were a couple later additions in the game's run. Bee Chic Boutique eventually turned into Bee Kooky Costumes, a VIP exclusive shop that focused on theatrical and Halloween costumes. Bee Fab Fashionistas was released as a tie-in with the Barbie Fashionista line of dolls in 2009 and included a style quiz. Enchantment Bay was the final area ever added to BarbieGirls.com before its closure, and was another VIP exclusive area, this time focused on ice skating. The final major district was the Extreme Dream Park, which was entirely VIP exclusive. This area had the Purple Parlor, one of the post-beta VIP editions. The Purple Parlor was a simple Arabian-styled hangout room with two themed mini-games, Crazy Carpet Ride and Crystal's Magic Fortunes. The other location was Sparkle Coaster Palace. No, Place. It's Purple Place all over again, which was mostly a hub for the game's only multiplayer minigame, Sparkle Coaster Race. The game is a bit like WarioWare, where you have a limited amount of time to perform very simple tasks, and whoever performs better takes the point for that round. One of the last locations to be added was the Twilight Woods, yet another VIP exclusive, which was a campground set in Eternal Twilight. Here you could buy some of Barbie Girl's only more tomboyish clothes, and also talk to a boy NPC. Many of the major site events on BarbieGirls.com were holiday-oriented. Hangouts throughout the area were reskinned, and limited-time items were put on offer for holidays like Halloween, Christmas, and Valentine's Day. Now, what's this VIP membership I keep mentioning? BarbieGirls.com used a very novel monetization technique that the turn of the 10s internet was simply not ready for. Like many games in 2022, BarbieGirls.com was free to play, but with an optional subscription-based full-access membership. Of course, the limitations of the free account goaded the players into asking their parents to shell out. The cost of this membership was $5.99 per month, or alternatively sold in options of 3 months for $17.97 and 6 months for $35.94. That's $72 a year for the standard subscription and $71.88 for the 6-month bundle for a whopping savings of 12 cents per year. If you weren't interested in buying a subscription, you had one other option to go VIP: the MP3 Players. As I mentioned, there is a physical product component to BarbieGirls.com, the Barbie Girl MP3 Players. These MP3 players were actually hybrid fashion toys. Plastic clothes and hair snapped onto the front of the device. Actually, every design element was removable. The base model was just a simple single-color blob with a USB dongle. You could style your MP3 player in a number of ways, or if you prefer, just carry her around nude and bald. Turns out that the $60 price tag for the MP3 player, which included a year's VIP, is actually more reasonable than the $72 per year on the subscription alone. It would be more economical to go and get a new MP3 player for every year that the website existed than to get 6 months memberships for the same amount of time. I once owned one of these MP3 players. Where is she now? God knows. Maybe she went to college or something. Maybe she found herself. All I know is that I looked and looked through the storage boxes that contained my childhood, and she wasn't in there. Even if I could find her, I really doubt that I'd be able to power on the device because that non-replaceable lithium battery has surely gone kaput by now. I know it was this specific model, and she either had no alternate outfits or ones that I immediately lost, because this is the outfit I used almost exclusively. However, I can tell you with absolute certainty what exactly was on that device. Each MP3 player came preloaded with that banger track from the site. And the rest was up to you. I remember plugging that thing into my computer, loading up the first CD I had on hand, being entirely pleased with myself, and then never adding any more music to that device for the rest of my life. The CD was The Shins' Wincing the Night Away. I was a mini hipster. I don't think any publicly available data exists on whether the majority of VIP subscriptions were provided via the digital subscription or through the MP3 players, but considering the increased inherent value of the MP3 players, I would kind of guess that it was a little more those. However, owning these music players wasn't really a critical part of the experience for a BarbieGirls.com fan, especially when you compare it to other virtual worlds with physical products like Webkins. I do, however, have one Barbie music player. And what song does it play? This is from McDonald's from the year 2000. Isn't it amazing that it still plays? So what happened to the website? It's time to discuss the death of Barbie Girls. BarbieGirls.com lasted only around 4 years, opening in 2007 and shuttering in 2011. Players were given some prior notice, letting them know that they should redeem any codes as soon as possible and say goodbye to their Barbie Girls friends. Barbie Girls did not loosen the Super B-Chat restrictions during this final window to allow for exchanging of other sites' usernames, instead restricting the entire site to standard B-Chat only, so the closing of the site marked the end of countless online friendships. Mattel released the following statement in regards to why the site shut down. BarbieGirls.com is closing as the Barbie brand is exploring new opportunities where girls can experience the best of Barbie. We are committed to providing girls with the best play experience both on and offline. You and your daughter are valued customers, and we truly appreciate your participation in the Barbie Girls world and hope that you will continue to play with Barbie online at Barbie.com. This non-answer is basically corporate speak for we got tired of running it and decided to move on. International versions of the site closed on April 30th, with US servers shortly following on the 1st of June. The only vestiges of the site to remain on the Barbie website were a handful of Flash games, which of course are now inaccessible due to the death of Flash. While I can't say exactly why Mattel decided to pull the plug on this project, and their statement certainly didn't help, I think it's fair to guess that it was just too much effort for too little payoff. The other games on the EverythingGirl.com website didn't have the paywall that Barbie Girls did because they didn't need to. There were no crowded MMO servers involved, and therefore no indefinitely upward scaling server costs. A petition was started to reopen the site, which depressingly only got less than 400 signatures. Clearly, the demand for Barbie Girls was not enough to revive the franchise. But what killed it in the first place? Let's discuss the problems. First, let's talk about predatory monetization. The VIP system was simultaneously the conceptual backbone and the cause of destruction of the BarbieGirls.com website. The VIP membership was controversial among parents at the time, with many claiming that the practice was exploitative. And yeah, it sure was. Barbie girls perfected the carrot dangling that is now so prevalent in child-oriented mobile apps, and I'm sure there was no shortage of little girls willing to swipe their parents' credit cards to make their VIP dreams come true. As time went on and more editions became VIP exclusive, the base game started seeming more boring in comparison. Naturally, kids' attention started straying elsewhere. Mattel couldn't afford to keep chasing away free-to-play users, and yet they also couldn't afford to retain them. Free-to-play users represented a parasitic strain on the server system, and there weren't enough players willing to pay up to offset this problem. And, of course, with the VIP system was bullying and classism. If you were an active user of any kid's virtual world with a paid membership element, you know about the classism that develops among the paid in-crowd versus the unpaid out-crowd. This website was no exception, and I would say the hypergendered nature of Barbie girls actually contributed to the problem. Young girls with VIP memberships felt liberated to adopt a stereotypical rich mean girl persona that they probably couldn't get away with in real life. There's no way to know which was a more effective marketing tactic: the limited gameplay capacity inherent to not being VIP, or the shame and embarrassment inherent to not being a VIP. Without this feeling of exclusivity that kids love to take advantage of, there would be no incentive to buy a subscription. This toxic atmosphere was inherent and integral to the fabric of the website. My source on that? I felt it. If you were there, you felt it. It was everywhere. It was the connective tissue of the website. It was the high that kids who were willing to shell out for a subscription or MP3 player craved like nothing else. It was the shame and frustration that caused little girls to beg their parents, steal, and even take their first foray into hacking and fraud. It was what kept BarbieGirls.com alive for as many years as it did, as few years as that may have been. The next major issue is loading times. Anyone who played the game back in the day, especially in its beta phase, is going to recognize this little music loop. This was the sound that meant you are in the server queue, and maybe one day you'll be able to log in. The login issue was particularly egregious in the beta phase. It might be my childhood mind warping this experience, but I remember waiting hours to access the site, attempting to distract myself with other activities, but constantly checking in, sometimes to absolutely no avail. I recall BarbieGirls.com experiencing a bit of a bell curve in performance quality. It was very poor in early beta, and then perfectly fine in late beta and early main release, and then very poor again later in its lifespan. Unlike the beta phase's reluctance to let you log in, later Barbie Girls let you in quickly at the cost of waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting between every single room. It didn't matter how well your computer could perform, because the user experience of Barbie Girls and similar MMOs are always going to hinge on the performance of the server itself and whether it's equipped to handle the load being demanded of it. Mattel was pretty clearly unwilling to upgrade their server capacity in any substantial way, which I suspect led to the site becoming unsustainable. I think this could be part of the reason why Barbie Girls closed without a noticeable drop in their user base. Another issue that I believe that led to Barbie Girls' unsustainability was the hypergendered content and gender exclusivity. BarbieGirls.com stood out at the time as one of the only virtual worlds designed exclusively for girls, which made it unique but also directly led to issues with its longevity. I think there's a reason virtual worlds like Club Penguin, Toontown, and Webkinz have much more actively enduring fan bases. Barbie Girls went out of its way to alienate half the entire population. The male character models were used for NPC characters exclusively. It was deemed implicit that if you were playing on BarbieGirls.com, you were a girl. Options were also slim for the non-hyperfeminine, and so I imagine a lot of girls who were repulsed by girly media were completely disinterested in the game. Plus, there's the extremely shallow and capitalistic take on girlhood that most games for girls employed at the time. Pretty much the only things to do in the game, especially in its early incarnation, were shopping and then styling yourself with the items that you bought. There's still a large part of me that says sounds good to me when presented with a game with this concept, but I can see how this approach to girlhood can negatively affect a young person's relationship with the concept of shopping, especially with constant emphasis on spending sprees and retail therapy. But Lee, perhaps you say, it was good to have a space just for girls. It prevented the dating and cybering culture that ran rampant on every other kid's virtual world. And to you I say, no, it did not. What BarbieGirls.com lacked in male character models, it had both in boy players and girls who were willing to pretend to be boys. Plus, there was a fair share of baby Barbie lesbians. I'm sure a lot of young LGBTQ people learned a lot about themselves while playing this game. Frankly, it's impossible to have a virtual world where people aren't obsessively trying to date each other. This begins in childhood and extends all the way into adulthood with basically no remedy. When the intended audience is children, the overseeing companies do their best, for obvious reasons, to tamp down on the activity, but there's very little that can be done to totally abolish the practice, even on a squeaky clean site like Barbie Girls. But how do you even do that with a word bank chat? Awkwardly, and generally with zero understanding of real-life sexuality. An Express article from 2007 makes this inflammatory claim: Barbie Girls' website is a haven for pedophiles. This article doesn't so much prove that there was an active problem with predators on Barbie Girls, but that anyone can make an account and masquerade as a young girl. I'm not saying this issue didn't exist, because unfortunately it exists on every single kid's social site to have ever been made. However, I don't think the issue was particularly prominent or concerning on Barbie Girls. You could argue that the hyper-restrictive censorship system did its job well, because there was pretty much no way of sharing personal information or other contact details. So even if predators were on the site, they had no access to these kids beyond their BarbieGirls.com profiles. Tangent aside, there was a non-zero male presence on the site, but due to the lack of actual representation with the character models, boys tended to shy away, even more so than girl-oriented fashion games with options to present as either a boy or a girl. While the idea of a girls-only MMO was a unique and in some ways noble venture, this tactic did severely hamper the site's sustainability. Now that I've covered the reasons that I suspect the site no longer exists, it's time to talk about why it was incredible anyways. Now is the segment where I throw my critical sensibilities out the window. We don't need those here. My particular perspective on Barbie Girls is this. I discovered the game in its extremely early beta in 2007 at the age of 9, and my mind was completely captured by the website. I played non-VIP for at least 2 years before I got my MP3 player in the latter half of the game's existence. So let me try to explain why the game tickled my brain in the way it did. The art style of this game pandered perfectly to my little mid to late aughts child self with its glossy, high-polished flash style. I still think the style is really cute, even if a bit restrictive in body and facial diversity. But since when has Barbie ever been known to look like anything but Barbie? Well, I'll take that back a little bit because admittedly, BarbieGirls.com and related products didn't look much like Barbie. If anything, they looked more like the kind of dress-up games and doll makers you'd find on Girls Go Games and similar websites with their big-headed, anime-inspired appearance. The shopping and dress-up aspects were easily the standout of the game for me, and generally a huge motivator towards resenting your basic, unglamorous, non-VIP account. As I recall, there was a limited variety of items you could purchase with your basic account, and you needed to be VIP to access anything else. I still think these clothing assets look really good. The style is very 2000s dated in a way that I find delightful. I mean, for God's sake, the Barbie of Barbie Girls is wearing a miniskirt over jeans. Fans of digital interior design will be pleased to know that this game has a robust decoration feature. Like most aspects of the game, non-VIP account rooms would have that frustrating limited item mechanic, and the rooms you could make as a VIP made you feel poor as hell if you weren't one already. Some of these rooms were really, really cool, and like the clothes, I still think the assets look really nice. The mystique. I fell for this hard when Barbie Girls was in its original beta incarnation. It just seemed like the most exclusive and mysterious thing on the entire everythinggirl.com website. And it was. Not only was there paid membership, in the early days you could barely log in. There were several layers to this mystique. The fact that the site needed its own username and password outside of your everythinggirls.com account, the sheer challenge of accessing the site at all in beta, the dangling carrot of the exclusive options offered by the VIP subscription. I was hooked. I needed to see everything. And so that brings me to the final best thing of the site. Actually being a VIP. What can I say? The VIP membership felt like an entirely new game. I fell headfirst into being addicted to the site again after I got my MP3 player and therefore a 1-year VIP membership, because there was simply so much to look at. The most exciting was the access to all the gorgeous clothes and hairstyles that I had been ogling all this time but were just barely out of my grasp. To a dedicated Barbie Girls fan, the VIP membership felt totally worth it, even if to parents it felt like extortion. My VIP era memories are sadly marred by the just plain abysmal loading times that were normal in the latter half of the site's existence, possibly indicating Barbie girls gaining a larger non-paying base than Mattel was able to sustain, or possibly just due to the quality of site maintenance starting to degrade. The boredom caused by the excessive loading screens caused me to leave the site for good, and when I came back, it was gone. Not all hope is lost for us nostalgic Barbie Girls fans. The Barbie Girls Rewritten project aims to revitalize the game using a combination of recovered and replicated assets, plus new content, fully free. The vision of this project is to recreate the game without the issues that made the original game frustrating and financially predatory. Some proposed additions include playable boys, mobility aids, and several new clothing options. This project is still in its infancy and has no specific release date except for the dress-up demo, which is now slated to release on the 7th of October. The proposed concept for this game already is pretty much everything I could have hoped for, but there are a couple specific fixes that I would like to see. First, fix loading times. Original Barbie Girls was an absolute slog to play at peak hours, with loading times reminiscent of The Sims 2. I don't think this needs to be this way in a virtual world released in the 2020s. The ability to maintain this is going to be severely impacted by a major obstacle to this project, which I'll get into soon. A less restrictive chat system that censors inappropriate words instead of censoring any word not available on a pre-approved list would be great. The pre-approved words list was awful, and the selected chat was even worse. Considering the majority of the rewritten project's audience will likely be the original target audience of BarbieGirls.com, I don't think the previous iteration's extreme degree of censorship is really necessary, and foul language can still be banned to make the game friendly for all ages. I'm not confident that we will ever see the game in the massively multiplayer online version that the original incarnation was. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see it that way, but there are certain production obstacles that I worry may be insurmountable. The largest obstacle is server costs. The limitations of a fan project based on a defunct copyrighted source are such that being nonprofit isn't enough, because nonprofit businesses can usually accept donations. In this case, you're not allowed to make a cent off the project without sticking the relevant party's lawyers directly down your throat. Similar projects like Toontown Rewritten are paid entirely out of pocket by the site's owners, a feat which is arguably possible due to the game's large and enduring fandom. I'm not sure that I could say that Barbie Girls Rewritten is in an equitable situation. Barbie Girls existed for a short amount of time relative to most other kids' virtual worlds, and its gender-exclusive branding hardly gained the same level of enduring fandom that other sites that catered to all kids did. The 2022 Barbie Girls fandom essentially consists of sporadic posts saying, "Remember BarbieGirls.com?" and, well, the Barbie Girls Rewritten team. Servers are not cheap. Server costs have spelled the doom of a lot of virtual worlds and arguably to the original incarnation of BarbieGirls.com. I think it's pretty clear that this will be the biggest hurdle in allowing Barbie Girls Rewritten to be a direct recreation of the original game. Even with adequate financial backing, if Mattel for some reason deems it a worthy cause, they could shut the project down for any number of reasons. Modern-day corporations are extremely eager to use the scorched earth method of revoking any means of accessing defunct media. Looking at you, Nintendo. I wouldn't be too surprised if Mattel decides this nostalgic fan project that doesn't compete with or steal business from any of their current products is just a bridge too far. Even if we don't ever get to see the game in its entirety as intended, there are several ways that Barbie Girls Rewritten can still serve up a valuable nostalgic user experience. The dress-up demo is scheduled to release in October, and I am extremely excited to play it. I think there are ways to finish this project in a satisfying way that don't involve exorbitant and indefinite server costs, but it really would be incredible to play with a bunch of people like back in the day. I truly hope they complete their goal, and Mattel, if you're watching this, leave them the alone. If you aren't bringing the site back, and you know you aren't, be gone. Everyone will hate you if you shut this down. Do you understand, Mattel? Let this happen. Despite my deep affection for the site, I can understand why Barbie Girls in its original incarnation had trouble being sustainable. I think a few more parents were willing to shell out for a $10 to $20 Webkinz plush than a $60 MP3 player, and the concept of paying money to access a completely digital product was still really new at the time. I'd like to say that it would have had better success in a few years after the concept of a digital subscription wasn't so new and scary, but I'm not sure if that's true. BarbieGirls.com existed precisely in the golden age of kids' virtual worlds. There has never been a demand for sites like BarbieGirls.com as strongly as there was when the site actively existed, so I have to imagine that a delayed Barbie Girls would have tanked as well. I really do think turning to a fully free-to-play model is the way to fix the game. The things available to free-to-play players felt just unfair at times, and this wasn't helped by Kitty Queen 77 laughing with her clique in the corner about how poor you are. I really hope the rewritten project works out, because I think removing the money-grubbing aspect would turn Barbie Girls into an unambiguously positive and fun user experience. Anyway, that's it for my look back at BarbieGirls.com. Do you have any memories of using the site? Were you a VIP queen, a free-to-play peon? Let me know with a comment. I'd really love to do some other videos on defunct kids media from my childhood, and maybe some that I'm less familiar with too. Tune in next time for a look back at another defunct fashion site that I was obsessed with, Girl Sense, so long as this video doesn't flop so severely that I'm discouraged to ever make a video essay ever again.